All right, you guys, welcome back to Runtpack episode 10.5. We are a D&D actual play podcast, and this is our second campaign, Runtpack Goes Planewalking, where you will follow us on a journey across all the planes and dimensions of the world of D&D. Today we have your periodic 5-episode recap. We're going to take it from the top and try to explain 10 episodes as fast as we possibly can. You have me, Maisie.
Me, Annette.
Me, Doolam.
And I am also here. Mason is here as well. Welcome, everybody, to our Runtpack recap. So, we're going to try to blaze through our first 10 episodes and set you guys up for episode 11, which should be dropping soon.
Next Monday.
Yes, next Monday. Bear with us. We're going to sort of rapid fire, bounce around the plot, starting at the beginning.
We opened up in Brightbank, a small town in the material plane. It was Maisie as Orpheus, Annette as Jaya, Carter, who's not here with us, as Hire, and Isaac as Doolam. We were coming from planes far and wide. Hire, a small blue kobold, came from the mundane plane where he had worshipped the goddess Ether. Doolam, a robotic auto-gnome with a blue crystal embedded in its chest and sigils inscribed along its metal body, along with some moss, came from Mechanicus. Orpheus, a knight from the afterlife plane of Valhalla, which is a ghost plane, and thus Orpheus came as a ghost who's now stuck in the body of a girl named Iceland, with tied-up brown hair and a hefty pair of goggles that are apparently prescription, so he has to wear them 24/7. He also has some raggedy-ass dress, boots, and pants. Last but not least, there was Jaya, a hippo person from a militaristic gift society on the jungle planet of Igroria, who is a large, elderly hippo man in a military uniform with a significant mustache.
Very important detail.
Very important.
So, our main cast of runts here on the Runtpack are all portaled into a small farm city called Brightbank, sort of controlled religiously by Father Luces, who is this sort of theocrat that rules the city and is very thrown off by this giant portal that's appeared in his city. This portal lets through all manner of creatures from across the multiverse, including our main cast.
As well as a cow with tentacles, a tiefling from Waterdeep, and an animate doll named Vagatha. So Father Luces wanted us all dead because he's bad. But we sort of talked our way out of it with the help of a human, man named Malagus, who offered his assistance and has since been following the party. We went to some merfolk in the forest where we met a giant fallen ent, who guided us through a quest to receive a magical stone called the Architect, which had been poisoning his water.
So after receiving the Architect, Doolam places it in its bag, and then after a few days, after opening its bag, it notices that many large rooms start expanding, creating a sort of labyrinth.
Sort of an infinitely generating bag castle.
So this bag has continued growing rooms and rooms and rooms.
So when you put stuff in the bag...
The stuff stays, but we've started seeing mutated stuff also appear. Makes you think.
Interesting. And there are dogs.
There may or may not be dogs. In return, the Ent redirected the portal in Brightbank to what, in his words, were somewhere closer to where we want to go, which ended up being Circad, a huge city made of towering spires, where water rises every night and submerges the bottom floors.
Father Luces, the father leading Brightbank, was dragged through accidentally, thus being forced to join the party.
So, in Circad, we learned that Zavarix was the name of the guy, the unofficial leader, a sort of wizard who controls who can come in and out of this small demi-plane, while the Lady of Pain is the official leader. It seems Zavarix is a strong rival. So we sought Zavarix out for a way to try to get back to the material plane, ideally to Waterdeep, so we could at least get Vinny where he wants to go, and also hopefully to meet other powerful wizards who could further us along on our quest. Zavarix sent us on a quest to retrieve his familiar Nibbles from the Feywild, who turned out to be not a cat, but in fact a tabaxi, but we struck a deal with her to get her to return, earning a favor from Zavarix, which we didn't initially use. We also met Zavrix and Nibble's friend Red Hands, who is sort of Zavrix's right-hand man.
An ogre who wears a sort of necklace of intellect that gives him a much more intelligent mind than the average ogre.
We then returned to our inn, which Malagus found for us, known as the Smoldering Corpse, where we met Jackknife, the barkeep. She is also a human, older human woman. And in her bar, there is a floating body that is on fire in the center of the bar and screaming 24/7. This makes the bar really cheap to stay in. Also, Oro learned that Diamisha, another ghost from his past, was inhabiting a body here. However, they didn't meet in person as Diamisha fled the scene, not trusting him. On the next day, we went to Samir's shop, The Broken Compass, where we met Deimos, a new member of our party, played by Xavier, who is a sort of chimera man made of the head of a dragonborn, arms of a lion, and feet of a goat. He is a wizard who seems evil. I'll say it.
Dubious at best.
Demos had spent several months living with Samir. They had spent some time, learning to repair together automatons.
Developed a strong father-son relationship.
It is at this place that Samir and Dulam, our auto-gnome runt, had conversations about Dulam's core, which seemed to have been slightly tampered with, leading to him being tracked from his home plane of Mechanus. Samir agreed to remove the tracker, but Dulam learns here that there is a enforcer bot, some sort of murder bot, that is after him, planning to dismantle and destroy him for faulty parts.
Which isn't great. We also learned that Samir knew Iceland, the body that Oro is currently inhabiting, and that they went way back, and also that Iceland originally stole the architect, the pebble we recovered, from the Lady of Pain.
The group is much more worried about the Nonaton robot that is after Dulam, so they go out into the forest of Surcat outside and wait, setting up a little tripwire against the edge of a cliff, and as the nightly tide slowly rose, the entire group ambushed this robot that appeared onto this plane to destroy Dulam.
We ended up killing the Nonaton, though I think both Malagus and Orpheus died in the process.
Oh.
But we were healed. I was unconscious, not fully dead. Didn't take a
Temporarily dead.
Temporarily dead. And another thing we've discovered is every time Orpheus goes unconscious, Iceland seems to return to his body, where her number one goal is to kill herself, so she doesn't have to stay here either. So it's sort of a double death.
Oh, now is she in your plane?
She's in my plane, we have learned.
Oh, fun.
And one thing Samir told us was that she was intentionally trying to go to my plane.
Oh.
And that's why I'm stuck here. So she's now Orpheus's main enemy, I would say.
So with the Nonaton fight out of the way, Dulam sort of breathes a sigh of relief with one pretty large weight off of his chest, but the core inside of him continues to sort of blink red, implying something is still wrong with it. So the runts spend a couple days sort of exploring the city, taking on some quests for gold, and trying to figure out a way back to their home plains. It is during this time that they are invited out to dinner by Zavrix as a reward for saving his cat. They travel to a fine dining spot owned by a devil named Flixie, who sort of had beef with Zavrix. So during this dinner, this devil attacks Zavrix, and by association, the Runtpack, by dropping a chandelier on their dining table.
It really felt like that situation where, like, your parents are trying to get back at each other by doing nice things with you.
The group was heavily injured. Demos was even killed, but was quickly healed by Hire. The group then storms after Zabrix into his home, demanding their reward, which was a portal out of here. He waffles for a while, refusing to give it up, and reveals that he had actually been recently visited by a warrior named Bisk, who was actually Orpheus's squire from Valhalla.
My ghost squire in Valhalla, who had possessed another human body.
Bisk once was like sort of, a non-physical ghost knight, but now inhabits the form of a tall, burly woman with sort of primitive garb and hand wrappings.
And fiery red hair.
Bisk had been sent by Zabrix to a plane of sort of cubes to fight
Minecraft
monsters
plane.
because Zabrix was irritated by him. The group then made a deal to basically give up their reward, which was the portal out, for Bisk's rescue. Bisk was then rescued and joins the crew.
And around this time we learned that Bisk had actually intentionally come to this plane searching for Orpheus, and that he and Dionysia were working together to try to find each other and Orpheus.
Oh, sweet.
So the same night,
Those are
the
my
Runts
boys.
run into Red Hands, that ogre with the necklace of intellect, who sort of shares his misery with Zabrix, and secretly under the table gives all of the Runts a small piece of Zabrix's magic, which gives them all mutations.
What a surprise.
Oh yeah.
So just some highlights for the mutations. We've got Dulam has laser blood.
Oh,
Orpheus got these sort of iron nails.
Yes, nails made of
Wait,
iron.
but how does an Anonym have blood?
Makes you think.
Really makes
I
you
think we
think.
said its oil was replaced with laser.
yeah.
And higher, our kobold can talk to alcohol.
And then fucking Deimos' light sensitivity.
Oh yeah.
That leads us into the next big mission that the Brunts took on, which was basically an invitation by Jackknife, the owner of the Smoldering Corpse, to a drinking competition. She
Woo!
basically asked the group to rig her competition because she promised more gold than she has.
Mm-hmm.
So the group decides to spend a couple days scoping out the competition from the town. Father Luces, who again was dragged here against his will, had just been freed. Was imprisoned by Dulam for a while in chains and ropes, but is free now and was sort of
Released for
spreading
good
the news of
behavior.
this drinking competition toward the rest of the city.
It wasn't
Mhm.
really imprisonment.
It was imprisonment.
He was part of the party.
He was a tied up part of the party. It was,
That's a prisoner.
he was a party member tied to a toilet for a
Well,
long
he's coming with us. I didn't put him in the toilet.
Okay, so we embarked upon this drinking competition. The night of the competition came, we were all signed up, including Malagus. Bisk was sent to bed early, and Father Luces was hanging out but not competing, as he does not drink. A very holy man. Things started to go to shit pretty fast, as Orpheus could not handle his alcohol whatsoever, which he was warned of ahead of time by Samir, who obviously knew Iceland when she was alive. So Orpheus couldn't handle his alcohol and immediately decided to try to get Samir disqualified because they had been given a tip that Samir would be the worst competition they had. Dulam, of course, well aware that Samir was a construct made of clay, but did not share this with the rest of the party.
Wouldn't be fair.
So Orpheus was trying to get Samir kicked out by challenging him to arm wrestling competitions, which Orpheus lost over and over and over, which his punishment was to run laps around the bar. Meanwhile, Hire met a new kobold, a very friendly kobold named His. However, the drink His offered to Hire claimed it was spiked, which caused Hire to accuse His of cheating and get him literally thrown out of the bar's window. Around this time, a dwarf named Forgetoe declared he was doing the worst out of his team, the Tipsy Miners, and therefore he was going to fight Dulam to get them both disqualified. Dulam, however, dispatched him easily, while Deimos just kind of watched. And Hire and Malagus both belatedly ran into Dulam's defense, but it didn't need any help. It had a lock on that situation. Meanwhile, after a few lost arm wrestling matches and a shit ton of laps around the bar, Samir finally agreed to give Oro some guidance on how he might get home to Valhalla. And also, Samir finally admitted Iceland was sort of in the wrong for kidnapping Orpheus, functionally. After that, Hire came over to try to seduce Samir out of the competition.
Was he successful?
Completely unsuccessful.
To no one's surprise.
Samir was mostly confused.
There was a lot of making out during this competition.
Well, yeah,
to-
so instead...
So this is the Doom romance.
No!
Not really a romance.
So since Hire failed to seduce Samir, he instead went over to Deimos, who, as a reminder, is functionally a son to Samir. Though Deimos is also a grown adult, but anyways. Hire instead asked to kiss Deimos, which they did. then looked at Samir hatefully while doing that, which somehow worked, and Samir, holding a one-legged, child-sized construct and seeing his son kiss a stranger, finally passed out and exited the game.
As the night wore on, the runts were, really just piss drunk. Malagus had tapped out, Hire had to tap out, Demos tapped out, and eventually Oro, our runner around, had to tap out.
Leaving Marblebraid and Doolum, the two leaders of the competition, who agreed to settle things with a final drink-for-drink run as the sun came up. Doolum came out on top, but just as it was declared the victor, a huge shake thundered through the building. The roof of the bar was torn off, as well as everything above it, including the rooms the runts had been staying in which Jaya, Gravy, Vinny, Bagatha, and Bisque could have been sleeping. Outside the
Supposed to be
windows, we
sleeping.
saw an advancing force moving two huge ballistas and the trebuchet which had destroyed the spire. Father Luces revealed he had summoned this mercenary force with the power of Chantea, and that they were here to free him. The runts fought off the attackers with the help of some other heroic drinking contest competitors, but at great cost. Marblebraid was among the many who died.
No.
Rip.
He went out a legend.
Now, why is there a eulogy for Bagatha?
We're getting there.
Okay.
So then, in the rubble of the smoldering corpse, we found the small doll body of Bagatha, which Vinny buried and mourned.
Now, were they in love?
They were in love.
They spent
That
many days
tiefling
together.
was fucking that doll.
Yes.
We looked out the window after we had defeated all these people and realized that the trebuchet, the last soldier standing, was the man manning the trebuchet. Father Luces told us that if we didn't deliver Father Luces to him, that man would loose a final strike and sink another spire. So while Oro, Doolum, and Malagus evacuated the spire the trebuchet was aimed at, Deimos enacted another plan, which was to first disguise himself as Father Luces, and then use detect thoughts to figure out the key word from Father Luces to make this guy stop, which he executed flawlessly. However, upon executing this key word to the trebuchet man, who was named Campbell did what apparently was the next part of their plan, which was to grab Father Luces and run off through the forest towards the portal back to Brightbank as fast as possible. At the portal, they saw about 20 other soldiers who had fled over the course of the battle. And so Deimos, great man that he is, offered to lead them in prayer and had them gather close around him in a 20 feet radius, and then fireballed all of them, burning them alive.
Yeah.
This had some...
Suicide?
No, Deimos lived.
Oh.
But the others, I guess they were gathered before their priest.
I see.
Yes, quite. This led to a pretty significant fight between Hire and Deimos, who had kissed just the night before.
Doomed romance.
Doomed romance. As Hire said he would not heal someone evil if Deimos continued to behave this way. One other thing that happened during the battle I forgot to mention was one of the mercenaries Hire actually recognized as Tick, a young Kenku girl from his plane of Ithera, who he was friends with. And so we got her to not fight anymore, and she has been reluctantly traveling with our party since then. Giving Orpheus a lot of sass that is not called for.
It's deserved.
It's not deserved. So after we took down Campbell, Father Luces was still around, so we turned him over to the Lady of Pain for punishing. She blinded him and then lobotomized him so that now he is like a follower. Of course, Doolum then welcomed him into our party, so now we have a horrifying lobotomized zombie follower.
Gotta bring him back.
Gotta bring him back. Member of the party.
He's basically had all his evil stripped from him, which was most of his personality, so he's
Yeah.
not a lot left going on in there.
We stayed the night at Samir's shop, the Broken Compass, and then spent most of the next day repairing the smoldering corpse with Jackknife. And that night, as we returned to the Broken Compass, we found Samir had left a note saying he had gone to bed early, but earlier he had promised us desserts, so Orpheus wasn't going to let that stand. Burst into his bedroom and found that Samir had been beheaded. And Dionysia and Bisque stood over him, having declared him a traitor against Valhalla for helping Iceland to steal Orpheus and get into Valhalla.
This, of course, Dionysia being the small, like, no more than 8-year-old boy.
Yeah, Dionysia in the body of a child boy. Dionysia attempted to convince Orpheus to go with her, but Orpheus ultimately denied that on the premise that she was suggesting she knew better than their queen Riddice, which goes against Orpheus's fundamental understanding of the world.
Wait, and that is our recap up to episode 10.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much for listening to our recap of the first 10 episodes. We hope you'll join us for episode 11 coming out next Monday.
Yeah.
As always, you can find us on Spotify or anywhere else you listen to podcasts, Apple Music, Samsung, whatever.
Samsung.
And please check out our subreddit r/Runtpack.
r/Runtpack. We have fan art on there, some miniatures, lots of things, more updates as well. You can see the Runtpack shop that they get to shop from.
Yeah, if you want to see the characters in their glory, check out the subreddit art.
There's fan art up there right now.
Add your own.
Add your own. Yeah, if you add fan art, we will give you shout outs on the podcast.
Yes.
As always, please comment on Spotify, hit us a follow or a rating, and please vote in our polls. Tell Mason Malagus is in fact a werecat.
Not a cat.
He's a cat.
He is a cat.
And you can find all our links in our Spotify bio. So, thank you all for listening. See you next Monday.